Despite what many may think, the justice system is not without fault. Romeo Filion is one of many who suffered gravely due to the fatal flaws in the justice system. Before Filion's death, on November 2, 2015, he was the longest-serving Canadian inmate to have a murder conviction overturned. Romeo was confirmed to be suffering from antisocial personality disorder, as well as a borderline personality disorder. He served a sentence of 31 years before the courts awarded him with bail after re-examining his case. Here is Romeo's story.
On August 19, 1967, an Ottawa firefighter named Leopold Roy was stabbed to death by a single unknown attacker. One of the only witnesses on scene, Leopold's wife Mildred, told authorities that she thought Romeo Filion resembled her husband's killer. However, since she was not positive, he was released soon after. On January 11, 1972, 5 years after the murder, Romeo was arrested for an unrelated crime. After a tedious interrogation, he confessed to Detective Hanault that he had in fact killed Leopold Roy. This, however, proved to be a false confession.
During the trial, much of the evidence had been misplaced, including nail clippings and hair. The court thereafter put its trust in Mildred's eyewitness testimony, neglecting to seriously consider the other 4 men she had also accused of her husband's murder. Despite the lack of evidence, Romeo and his initial false confession led him to receive a life sentence in prison.
More than 30 years later, Romeo was presented with an envelope containing his first real chance at proving his innocence. Inside was a report written by a Detective McCombie, as well as an alibi. Detective McCombie had spoken to a Trenton service station operator, confirming that between 12 o'clock p.m. and 1 o'clock p.m., Romeo had been in Trenton and not in Ottawa, where Leopold was murdered.
The Crown prosecutor was in possession of the records stating Romeo's confirmed whereabouts the night of the murder. However, this crucial evidence was withheld from Filion's lawyer. Had the defense been presented with proof that Romeo was, in fact, not in Ottawa at the time of the murder, his trial would have gone very differently, most likely not resulting in a life sentence.
Due to this miscarriage of justice, Romeo was awarded bail, and in 2010, his murder charges were revoked. Although the report and the alibi that eventually freed Romeo had been there all along, it took 31 years to be found, 5 more years for bail to be awarded, another 3 years for the court to have the case reopened, and yet another 4 years for the charges on Romeo to be dropped completely.
Though he had finally escaped life in prison, his life outside of it was not much more joyous. He soon became ill after being released and sought compensation for his 31 years spent in prison under a false accusation.
Romeo began a $14 million lawsuit against the Attorney General of Ontario and the 2 police investigators involved in his case. Unfortunately, he died in 2015, just before his case was dismissed by the court.